Good evening and welcome. I'm glad you're here in whatever kind of tired you're carrying today. Welcome to Sleepy Science Universe. Before we begin, take one slow inhale through your nose and let the exhale be easy, like you're gently fogging a window. Nothing to count, nothing to fix. If you'd like to settle in with us again, you can subscribe whenever it feels natural. For now, just get comfortable and let the facts do the work of being simple. Tonight we'll drift through animal intelligence one clear idea at a time. Quiet, understandable and softly spaced. So if you wake up midway, the next sentence will still make sense. A quiet fact. Animal intelligence is the ability to solve problems and adjust behavior in real time. In plain words, it's how an animal meets a challenge and finds a workable next step, even if it takes a few tries. Sometimes that learning happens in seconds, and sometimes it unfolds over days, like a slow pattern settling into place. One more gentle truth. Scientists found that intelligence can show up as memory, not just clever tricks. Some animals look calm and ordinary, yet they remember places, faces and familiar patterns across weeks, months, or even years, like a quiet trail that stays visible in the mind. That kind of memory is not dramatic, but it is steady, and it changes what happens next. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. In the background, problem solving is when an animal changes strategy after a mistake. The important part is the switch, trying a new approach when the old one fails instead of repeating it forever. In a simple puzzle, that can look like trial 1 being clumsy and trial 5 being smooth, with the method quietly improving each time. A small step forward, social intelligence is knowing who is safe, who is dominant and who is familiar. In a group, an animal can learn relationships like a living map. Who shares, who challenges, who stays close, and who keeps distance. In many social species, that map can include dozens of individuals, each one carrying a different meaning. A softer detail, animal learning can be fast when rewards are clear and consistent. When the same action leads to the same result, brains, big or small, tend to lock onto the pattern after only a few repeats, like a small groove forming in the mind. Even a soft tap, a tiny treat, or a simple success can be enough to shape the next decision, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Just for a moment, animals can show self-control by waiting instead of grabbing immediately. Waiting is a kind of decision, choosing later for something better, even when right now is available. In studies that measure patience, the wait may only be seconds to minutes, but that short delay can reveal a lot about attention and control. Farther out, working memory is holding one detail in mind while doing something else. It's like keeping a single note in your head while you move through a small task without letting it slip away. Often it's not many items, maybe 1, 2, or a few, but even that small capacity can guide a careful choice. Closer in, animals can form simple concepts like same and different. Some can sort patterns without needing words, recognizing that two things match or that one thing stands apart. In a quiet test with shapes or cards, the task can be as simple as 2 categories, match or not. Yet the idea behind it is surprisingly deep, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. If you drift a little, tool use is intelligence expressed through objects, not just muscles. A stick, a stone, or a shell can become part of the plan, extending what the body can do on its own. Sometimes it's as small as one object becomes a tool, but that single change turns the environment into a set of possibilities. With that in mind, planning is acting now for a benefit that comes later. Even a small delay between action and reward can count as planning, because it means the animal is doing something that only makes sense with the future in view. It might be minutes or hours later that the payoff arrives, like food stored in a hidden place and returned to when hunger is real. Here's a calm surprise. Communication can be intelligent when signals change with context. The same call can mean different things depending on what's happening, like one sound that means come here in one moment and watch out in another. When a single call carries two meanings, it asks the listener to read the situation, not just the noise. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Slowly, we notice. Imitation is learning by watching rather than by trial and error. It saves time, copying a working method instead of reinventing it from scratch, especially when mistakes are costly. In some cases, one demonstration can replace many trials, as if the mind borrows a shortcut from another mind. A quiet fact: some animals recognize individuals, not just types of animals. Faces, voices, scents, and movement styles can become personal signatures, stored in memory like quiet labels. In a social world, that can mean knowing dozens of individuals, each with their own history. One more gentle truth: play is a quiet laboratory where animals test rules safely. In play, they practice skills without the full cost of failure, exploring what happens when they chase, pause, turn, or share. It's a kind of rehearsal, practice without stakes, where the brain learns patterns while the body stays relatively safe. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. In the background, curiosity is intelligence that moves toward new information. Exploring the unfamiliar can build a better mental map, even when the exploration is gentle and slow. In simple comparisons, animals often investigate a new object differently than a known one, as if novelty itself is a small question. A small step forward. Flexibility is when an animal stops doing what used to work. It's a calm shift. That worked yesterday but not today. And it matters because the world changes. In experiments where the rule changes after a few trials, flexible animals adjust sooner, and the old habit fades like a quiet echo. A softer detail: some animals learn cause and effect from tiny clues. They connect actions with outcomes, even when the link is subtle, like noticing that one motion makes a latch click, or one choice makes a door open. In the simplest form, it's one action leading to one outcome, and that link becomes a guide for the next attempt. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Just for a moment, memory can be spatial, like remembering a route through landmarks. The world becomes a gentle grid of familiar points. This rock, that tree, that bend in the path. So travel is guided by recognition. Even when it's described as landmark to landmark, it can cover surprisingly large spaces, stitched together by small remembered details. Farther out, memory can be social, like remembering who shared and who didn't. Cooperation often depends on long, quiet accounting. Who offered help? Who took too much? Who stayed near during risk? Sometimes the past interaction that matters is only days old, but it can still shape whether an animal chooses to approach, to avoid, or to share. Closer in, some animals show inference, choosing the best option from partial information. They don't need every detail, just enough to pick wisely, like deciding between two options when one is hidden. In a simple setup, 2 covered cups, 1 reward, an animal may use a small clue to choose the cup that makes more sense. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. If you drift a little, intelligence can be specialized to an animal's life, not a human test. A mind fits its habitat like a key fits a lock. tuned to the problems that show up again and again. That fit-for-purpose kind of intelligence may look different across species, but it can be just as effective. With that in mind, many tests measure attention, what an animal chooses to focus on. Attention is the doorway, what enters the mind in the first place, and it can be measured in simple spans of time. Sometimes it's only seconds of sustained focus, but those seconds are enough to support learning, memory, and careful action. Here's a calm surprise. Honeybees can learn to associate a scent with a reward. A smell becomes a signpost for where sweetness might be found, and the bee's next flight becomes more purposeful. Often it only takes a few training visits for that association to form, like a tiny connection strengthened each time. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Slowly we notice. Bees can communicate location using a dance-like pattern. Movement can carry direction and distance information to nestmates, turning the body into a message. You can think of it as an angle plus a distance code, performed in the dark interior of the hive where light is scarce. A quiet fact: ant colonies are intelligent as a group, even if one ant is simple. Many tiny decisions can add up to a smart collective outcome, like a solution emerging from countless small steps. In a healthy colony, there can be thousands of workers, each following simple rules that together make a complex system. One more gentle truth: ants can find shortest paths by reinforcing successful routes. Chemical trails strengthen where travel works best, so the path that saves time and energy becomes clearer over repeated trips. In a forked route, Route A versus Route B, the better route gradually wins, not by command, but by quiet accumulation. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. In the background, some ants keep time by matching routines to day and night cycles. Internal rhythms help them anticipate when to forage, when to retreat, and when to conserve energy. The pattern often follows the familiar 24-hour cycle, like an invisible clock that keeps the colony aligned with the world outside. A small step forward, fruit flies can learn simple patterns and remember them briefly. Even tiny nervous systems can store a small association, enough to change behavior in the next moment. The memory may last minutes to hours, but in a short-lived life, even that span can matter. A softer detail: octopuses can solve puzzles by exploring with arms and touch. Their intelligence is partly in their limbs, not only the brain, because each arm carries rich sensors and local control. With 8 arms sampling a space, the octopus can gather information in parallel, turning touch into a kind of thinking. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Just for a moment, octopuses can open jars or latches with repeated practice. They learn the feel of the mechanism over time, as if the right movement becomes familiar in the muscles and the mind together. After several attempts, a twist that once seemed impossible can become smooth and quiet. Farther out, octopuses can remember a safe shelter location in a complex space. They use the environment like a map made of shapes, rocks, shadows, textures, so the route back becomes reliable. With multiple landmarks in mind, the journey turns from wandering into return. Closer in, cuttlefish can change skin patterns quickly in response to threats. Their camouflage is a fast decision, not just a reflex, with pattern shifts that can happen in less than a second. In dim water, those changes can look like moonlit textures sliding across the body, matching the world in real time. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. If you drift a little, some spiders can plan a route before jumping on prey. They pause, watch, and then choose a path that works, even if that path is a detour rather than a straight line. The simple comparison is pause, then detour, and it can look like a small decision forming in stillness before the leap. With that in mind, jumping spiders can learn to avoid prey that looks dangerous. After one bad outcome, they update their choices, as if the memory of risk is stored in a quick rule, not that one. In tiny creatures, a single experience can be enough to change behavior in the next encounter. Here's a calm surprise. Snails can form simple memories tied to touch or smell. Slow animals still learn which signals mean safe and which signals mean not safe. Even if the learning takes time, those associations can last hours to days, like a soft boundary the mind remembers. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Slowly we notice. Crabs can learn the layout of a shelter area over repeated trips. Familiar routes reduce risk and save energy, so a crab's movements become more direct with experience. You can imagine the change as same route, fewer errors, a quiet improvement measured in smoother returns. A quiet fact: lobsters can remember shelters and compete for them strategically. They choose places that improve survival, not just convenience, especially when shelters are limited and valuable. In a rocky crevice world, a good hiding place can be the difference between resting and being exposed. One more gentle truth: some worms show learning by changing response to repeated harmless touch. The nervous system learns what can be ignored, so the animal stops reacting to every small vibration once it proves harmless. After repeated taps, the response often fades, like the body saving energy for what matters. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. In the background, cephalopods can show curiosity toward new objects in their environment. They explore as if collecting information with touch and sight, returning to investigate without obvious reward. In simple comparisons, novelty versus familiar objects can reveal that quiet pull toward the unknown. A small step forward, octopuses can use coconut shells or debris as portable shelter. Carrying an object now can pay off later as protection, which is a small kind of planning. Carry now, hide later. It's a gentle example of future-minded behavior in a world of rocks and shadows. A softer detail: bees can generalize learning, applying one lesson to a similar pattern. They don't only memorize one exact shape, they can recognize close enough and respond to patterns that share key features. With similar shapes, the idea of a category begins to appear, even in a tiny brain. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Just for a moment, ants can work around obstacles by exploring until a new path stabilizes. Small experiments accumulate into a reliable route, and the colony's traffic gradually shifts toward what works. The timescale can be minutes of exploration, which is quick in a day and meaningful in a life. Farther out, some insects show counting-like behavior with small quantities. It may be approximate rather than exact, but it can still help in decisions, like choosing between a few landmarks or a small number of items. Often the range is about 1 to 4 items, where the difference is easiest to track. Closer in, invertebrate intelligence is often distributed, body and brain working together. Touch, movement, and simple rules can create complex choices, especially when many sensors feed into steady action. You can picture it as many sensors, simple rules, producing a calm, reliable kind of problem-solving. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A quiet fact: crows can use tools to reach food that is otherwise out of reach. A stick becomes a bridge between desire and method, turning distance into something solvable. The comparison is simple: reach extended by a tool, as if the crow's intention gains an extra length. With that in mind, some crows can bend or shape a tool to fit a task. Changing the object is a sign the plan lives in the mind, because the crow isn't only using what it finds, it's making what it needs. Even tool modified once can be a meaningful step from chance to design, and for one sleepy soul that's enough to rest. Here's a calm surprise. Ravens can remember who helped them and who didn't. Social memory can guide future cooperation, shaping who is approached and who is avoided. The delay can be days later, which makes the memory more than a momentary mood. It becomes a stored relationship. Slowly, we notice. Parrots can learn to match sounds to objects and actions. They connect a signal with a real thing in the world, so the sound isn't just noise but a cue with meaning. In some trained cases, it can grow to dozens of labels, like a small library of associations, a quiet fact. Some parrots can understand categories like colour or shape. It's not only mimicry, it can be sorting by meaning, choosing the object that fits the rule, rather than the object that looks most familiar. Even a two-category sorting task can reveal that the mind is grouping the world, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. One more gentle truth. Food caching birds can remember many hidden food locations. Their worlds are full of invisible pins on a mental map, places where something valuable waits, hidden and safe. In some species, the number can reach hundreds to thousands of caches, which is less like a trick and more like a lifestyle built on memory. In the background, jays can update a cache plan depending on who is watching. They act differently when another bird might steal later, as if attention itself becomes a risk factor. The comparison is watched versus unwatched, a quiet difference that changes where the food goes, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A small step forward, some birds learn by listening, not only by seeing. Sound patterns can teach what is safe or risky, especially when visibility is low. One alarm call can change behavior quickly, like a single note that rearranges the whole moment. A softer detail, songbirds can memorize complex songs with repeated practice. A song is a long sequence stored in order, like a chain of notes that has to be recalled in the right rhythm. In some species, it can be dozens of notes, repeated until the pattern becomes smooth. Just for a moment, birds can show planning by saving a tool for later use. Keeping an object suggests a future moment is already imagined, even if the imagination is simple. The comparison is gentle. Use later, not now. An action that only makes sense across time, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Farther out, pigeons can learn routes through cities using landmark patterns. Streets become a gentle network of familiar turns, and the skyline itself becomes part of the map. The distance can be kilometers of navigation, guided by recognition rather than by guesswork. Closer in, some birds can detect subtle pattern changes in visual scenes. Small differences can matter for food and safety, so attention becomes fine-grained and precise. In simple terms, it can be tiny contrast shifts, barely noticeable to us, yet meaningful to them. If you drift a little, chickens can track simple social ranks within a group. They learn who yields and who advances, and they adjust behavior to reduce conflict and keep order. In a group of 10 to 30, that knowledge becomes a daily map of who stands where in the social world. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. With that in mind, some seabirds navigate by smell across open ocean. Odours form a faint map when land is out of sight, and direction becomes something you can sense rather than see. The scale can be tens to hundreds of kilometres, which makes the sense of smell feel almost like a quiet compass. Here's a calm surprise. Woodpeckers can learn which trees yield more food with less effort. They refine choices by experience, like quiet optimization, returning to the places where success is more likely. The comparison is tree A versus tree B, repeated until the better option becomes the habit. Slowly we notice. Some birds show innovation, inventing a new solution in a new situation. A fresh problem can trigger a fresh method, and the first-time solution can look like a small spark of flexibility. It's not magic, more like a calm rearrangement of what the bird already knows. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A quiet fact: ravens can use perspective, what another bird can or can't see. They behave differently depending on another's line of sight, hiding food more carefully when eyes are watching. The comparison is visible versus hidden, a simple geometry of attention. One more gentle truth: parrots can learn routines that involve multiple steps in sequence. Steps become a calm chain, first this, then that, until the order itself is remembered. In simple tasks, it might be 3 to 5 steps, and that sequence becomes a small path through time. In the background, some corvids can resist a smaller reward to get a better one. It's a simple form of patience under temptation, where waiting changes what is gained. The comparison is clear. Wait time increases reward, and the moment of waiting becomes the test. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A small step forward, birds can learn rules like pick the one that matches the sample. A sample becomes a guide, not a random cue, shaping the next choice in a stable way. In match-to-sample tasks, the mind is following a rule, not guessing. A softer detail: some birds recognize human faces and remember past interactions. Familiarity can be stored as safety or threat, and that memory can last months later. The scene is simple: a quiet sidewalk at night, and a bird that remembers. Just for a moment, cockatoos can solve mechanical problems by testing parts. They explore hinges and edges until a method emerges, using persistence that is steady rather than frantic. Often it's several tries and then success, as if the right move finally clicks into place. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Farther out, some birds use the sun's position as a compass cue. Sky patterns can guide direction when the ground looks the same, and time itself becomes part of navigation. The sun's arc across hours gives a changing reference, like a slow-moving sign in the sky. Closer in, bird intelligence often blends memory, attention, and quick learning. It's a smooth mix, tuned to flight, foraging, and social life, where decisions can happen fast. In many moments, it's fast decisions in seconds, small choices made cleanly, then carried forward. A quieter pause arrives here, like a soft bend in the path. Take one gentle inhale through the nose, and let the exhale be a little longer, as if you're smoothing out a sheet. We've watched intelligence take many shapes: memory that lasts, tools that extend reach, and small rule changes that invite flexibility. If your attention wanders, that's part of the design. You can let the details pass without holding them, the way you might watch distant lights through a window. And when you're ready, we'll continue with another calm set of animal minds, one clear fact at a time. If you drift a little, dolphins can learn new tasks through training and social observation. Watching another can reduce the need for trial and error, so learning becomes faster and less costly. Sometimes one demonstration is enough to guide the next attempt, like a shortcut borrowed from a companion. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. With that in mind, dolphins can use signature whistles that act like individual names. A stable sound pattern can identify who is who, even when bodies are hidden by distance or water. The comparison is quiet but striking. One distinct whistle per individual, a vocal signature that can be recognized. Here's a calm surprise. Elephants can remember water locations across long dry periods. Their memory supports survival over large landscapes, guiding travel when resources are scarce. The scale can be tens of kilometers, a slow journey held together by knowing where relief can be found. Slowly we notice elephants can recognize many individuals by scent and sound. A herd becomes a catalogue of familiar identities, stored as relationships rather than as random encounters. The number can be dozens of relationships, each one carrying history, trust, and meaning. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A quiet fact: primates can use tools like sticks to reach hidden food. The tool becomes an extension of intention, turning a gap into something the hand can solve. The comparison is simple: reach extended, as if the body gains a longer, smarter shape for a moment. One more gentle truth some primates learn by copying a successful peer. Copying is a shortcut through a complicated problem because it lowers the cost of discovering what works. In the simplest form, it can be copy once, succeed sooner, with learning happening through observation. In the background, meerkats teach young ones to handle prey more safely over time. Adults can adjust what they offer based on the learner's ability, scaling difficulty as the young become more skilled. The comparison is clear. Easier prey, then harder prey, unfolding over days or weeks like a slow curriculum. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A small step forward, wolves coordinate roles during hunts through attention and timing. Group success can depend on who moves first and who waits, with positions shifting as the scene changes. Sometimes it's seconds of timing that matter, a small delay that turns a chase into a capture. A softer detail: dogs can read human gestures like pointing in many contexts. A simple hand movement can guide their choice, connecting a human signal to a physical outcome. In classic comparisons, it's 2 bowls and 1 point, and the dog uses the cue to pick the better option. Just for a moment, rats can learn routes through mazes and remember them later. The path becomes a stored sequence of turns, like a little story told in lefts and rights. Even a left-right sequence is a kind of map, carried in memory and used again. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Farther out, some rodents cache food and remember multiple hiding spots. They keep a quiet inventory of places that matter, returning when the time is right. The number can be dozens of caches, each one a small promise tucked into the world. Closer in, bats can learn acoustic maps using echoes. Sound returns as shape, distance, and texture, giving the bat a sense of space without light. The timing can be milliseconds of echo delay, tiny differences that still carry clear meaning. If you drift a little, some monkeys recognize fairness, reacting when rewards differ too much. In simple setups, 2 individuals do the same task, yet one receives a better treat, and the imbalance can change willingness to continue. The comparison is the unequal reward itself, one outcome beside another, and the reaction shows how social expectations can shape cooperation. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. With that in mind, great apes can plan a multi-step solution to reach a goal. They arrange actions in order, not randomly, as if the steps are lined up in the mind before the body begins. In many tasks, it's about 3 to 6 steps, like moving a box, then climbing, then reaching, with each piece placed where it needs to be. Here's a calm surprise. Some primates understand simple cause and effect with tools. They learn which motion makes the useful result happen: push versus pull, or lift versus slide, until the outcome feels predictable. A rope that moves a platform becomes a quiet lesson. One action, one consequence. Slowly we notice. Hyenas can solve problems that require patience and persistence. They keep trying without frantic energy, testing edges and angles until the mechanism gives way. In many experiments, it's many tries before success, and the steady persistence is part of what makes the mind visible. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A quiet fact: horses can learn human cues and remember routines across days. Familiar sequences become calm and predictable. Stand here, walk there, pause now, until the pattern feels like a shared language. The comparison is daily routine remembered, repeated until it becomes smooth. One more gentle truth: cats can learn household patterns, anticipating people's movements. Repeated schedules become quiet forecasts. Footsteps that usually mean dinner, a door that usually means bedtime. Even same time each day can be enough for a mind to build expectation. In the background, whales can show long-term social bonds that persist over years. Relationship memory can last far beyond a single season, shaping who travels together and who stays close. The number idea is simple but wide. Years-long association, carried through migrations and long distances, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A small step forward, some mammals learn inhibition, resisting a learned habit when it stops working. They pause, then pick a new path, especially when a familiar rule is flipped. In reversal tasks, the change is the point. What worked yesterday no longer works today, and the mind adapts. A softer detail: otters can use stones as tools to crack shells. A hard surface becomes a simple machine, turning a sealed meal into something accessible. The comparison is one stone, many shells, repeated with quiet tapping that looks almost like a steady rhythm. Just for a moment, some mammals can learn from a single strong experience and remember it long after. One outcome can reshape future choices, especially when the event is intense and clear. The number idea is one event to lasting change, like a single lesson that sticks. Farther out, social intelligence can be as important as puzzle solving in many mammals. Knowing who often matters more than knowing how, because survival depends on relationships, timing, and trust. In a group with many individuals and many roles, a mind can be busy with social maps all day. Closer in, mammal intelligence often shows up as memory, flexibility, and quiet planning. It's less like a performance and more like steady adaptation, where choices change with seasons and circumstances. The timescale can be days to seasons, a slow arc of learning in a living world. If you drift a little, seals can learn complex routines and remember them for later sessions. Training becomes stored patterns that return smoothly, even after a break. In many cases, the retention lasts weeks, which means the learning isn't just momentary, it settles in. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. With that in mind, sea lions can solve problems by testing objects and remembering what worked. They don't only repeat, they refine, changing approach based on what happened last time. You can picture attempt 1 versus attempt 10, with fewer errors and more direct choices as practice builds. Here's a calm surprise. Orcas can coordinate as a group with timing and roles. The group behaves like a single calm strategy, with movements that look rehearsed even when the situation is new. The number idea is seconds of synchronization, small timing windows that turn many bodies into one plan. Slowly, we notice. Some dolphins use sponges as protective tools while foraging. A soft object can prevent injury during a search, especially when the seafloor is rough. The comparison is one sponge's armor, a small shield carried into the work of finding food. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A quiet fact: fish can learn too. Some remember which places are safe. Learning doesn't require fur or feathers, it requires a nervous system and a pattern that repeats. In avoidance studies, the memory can last for days, shaping which corners are approached and which are quietly skipped. One more gentle truth: cleaner fish can remember clients and adjust behavior to keep relationships. Cooperation can be maintained by memory and choice, especially when the cleaner's reputation matters. The comparison is repeat customers, familiar visitors that return, expecting a certain kind of care. In the background, sharks can learn to follow patterns for rewards in controlled tasks. They can associate cues with outcomes over time, changing behavior as the pattern becomes reliable. The core structure is cue to reward, repeated until the association becomes steady, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A small step forward, manta rays can show curiosity, returning to novel objects repeatedly. Repeated investigation suggests a mind gathering information, even when the object is not food. The number/comparison is multiple returns, like a question asked more than once. A softer detail: whales can learn new songs or song elements within a population. Shared patterns can spread like a calm tradition, moving from one group to another over time. The number idea is song changes over months, slow enough to feel like a cultural drift rather than a sudden switch. Just for a moment, some seals can recognize individual voices and respond differently. Sound becomes identity in a wide, watery world where visibility can be limited. The comparison is one voice among many, singled out and remembered like a familiar signature. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Farther out, dolphins can understand gestures as signals that guide a choice. A sign becomes a map for what to do next, connecting a movement with an outcome. In simple setups, it can be 2 actions and 1 cue, and the cue quietly decides the path. Closer in, some marine animals solve detour tasks, going away from a goal to reach it. It's the calm logic of taking the long way, like moving sideways to get around a barrier instead of pushing straight into it. The comparison is detour around a barrier, a small proof of flexible planning. If you drift a little, cephalopods can learn which textures or shapes signal danger. They update choices using subtle sensory information, as if the body reads the world like a quiet language. The comparison is safe pattern versus risky pattern, learned through experience and held as a rule. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. With that in mind, some fish navigate using Earth's magnetic field as a cue. A faint, invisible signal can guide direction when landmarks are absent, like a compass made of biology. The comparison idea is simple: magnetic compass sense, used across open water. Here's a calm surprise. Marine mammals can learn from mistakes, changing choices after a failed attempt. The shift is the interesting part. Not stubborn repetition, but adjustment toward what works. In many tasks, error rate decreases over trials, a gentle slope that shows learning. Slowly we notice. Dolphins can coordinate vocal signals during group activity. Sound can keep spacing and timing steady, especially when visibility is limited or the group is spread out. The number idea is call and response timing, with cues arriving in rhythm and guiding motion. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A quiet fact: sea otters can teach young ones by repeating a simple tool routine. A repeated method becomes a learned family habit, passed along through patient observation. The number idea is many repetitions, the same motion returning until it becomes natural. One more gentle truth: In the ocean, intelligence often has to work with limited visibility. When sight is weak, touch and sound become the mind's lanterns, carrying information through darkness and distance. The comparison is low light, high reliance on sound, a world read by echoes and vibrations. A quieter pause arrives again, like a soft tide turning. Take a slow inhale and let the exhale run a little longer, as if you're lowering your shoulders by a single degree. We've seen ocean minds use tools, voices, detours, and memory, small decisions layered into steady skill. You don't have to hold any of it tightly. If your focus drifts, it can drift, like a surface ripple moving across dark water. In the background, some dolphins can remember a task rule after a break and return to it. The rule persists quietly, even when activity pauses and the animal resumes as if the instruction is still there. The number idea is after hours or days, the memory waiting like a stored line of code. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A small step forward, seals can learn to discriminate between very similar signals. Fine differences can be noticed and used in choices, even when the change is subtle. The comparison is small difference, big decision, like two tones that sound almost the same yet lead to different outcomes. A softer detail. Some fish show social learning by following trained individuals. One informed animal can guide many, reducing the cost of discovery for the rest. The comparison is one leader, several followers, moving like a single shape through the water. Just for a moment, ocean intelligence can be quiet, steady, and shaped by sound and space. It's often about navigation, timing, and the calm use of cues, rather than flashy displays. The scale can stretch from meters to kilometers, yet the decisions can still be small and precise, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Farther out, animal communication is information moving from one nervous system to another. A call, a gesture, or a posture can change what another animal does next, turning sound or movement into guidance. In the simplest shape, it's signal to behavior change, like a tiny message that rearranges a moment. Closer in, some monkeys have distinct alarm calls for different predators. Different dangers can trigger different sounds and different group responses, as if the call points to the kind of problem, not just the presence of one. In many systems, it's at least two call types, sometimes more, each one linked to a particular kind of threat. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. If you drift a little, prairie dogs can vary calls with details like size or speed of a threat. More detail can mean better group timing, because the response can match the moment more closely. The comparison is simple, more than one detail encoded, like a message that carries a little extra information in its shape. With that in mind, dolphins can imitate sounds, including novel ones in some settings. Copying a sound is like copying a shape made of air, repeating it until it matches closely enough to be recognized. The number idea is quiet but clear. A new sound repeated, not once, but enough times for the pattern to settle. Here's a calm surprise. Birds can learn dialects, local versions of songs. A population can share a style the way neighborhoods share accents, and that shared style can spread through listening and repetition. The comparison is one region, one dialect, carried softly from bird to bird, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Slowly, we notice some whales share song patterns that spread across groups over time. The pattern can move like a slow wave, passing from one group to another until the broader population begins to sound a little different. The number idea is months-long spread, a gradual change you can almost imagine travelling across the dark sea. A quiet fact, Teaching is when an animal changes behavior to help another learn. It costs effort now, but benefits the learner later, so it's not just doing, it's guiding. The comparison is cost now, benefit later, an investment made in the direction of the future. One more gentle truth. Meerkat teaching can scale difficulty as pups grow. The lesson changes as the learner becomes more capable, with adults offering safer challenges first and harder ones later. The comparison is easy to hard over days or weeks, like a slow ramp that matches growth. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. In the background, social learning spreads behavior without every animal reinventing it. A useful trick can travel through a group quietly, moving from one individual to the next with observation doing most of the work. The comparison is one innovator, many adopters, like a solution becoming shared property. A small step forward. Some chimp communities use certain tools while others nearby do not. Differences can persist like local traditions, even when the animals live in similar environments. The comparison is community A versus community B, a gentle reminder that learning can have a history. A softer detail. Birds can learn to open containers by watching experienced birds. A technique can spread faster than solo discovery, because seeing success removes a lot of guesswork. The comparison is simple, faster after observation, as if the group shares a shortcut, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Just for a moment, some animals use gestures that are directed at a specific individual. Direction and timing can reveal this is for you, not just a general movement in space. The number idea is one gesture, one target, like a signal placed precisely where it belongs. Farther out, vocal learning is when sounds are shaped by experience, not only instinct. Practice changes the signal, like sculpting with breath, and the shape becomes more stable with repetition. The number idea is practice over weeks, a quiet training period that leaves a lasting imprint. Closer in, some parrots adjust calls depending on the social situation. The same bird can sound different in different moments, as if the voice is tuned to context. The comparison is context shift, one setting, one style, then another, without needing any new body at all. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. If you drift a little, communication can be multimodal, sound plus posture plus movement. Signals often arrive as a bundle, not one channel, and the bundle can be clearer than any single piece alone. The number idea is 2 to 3 channels at once, layered gently like overlapping waves. With that in mind, some animals take turns in call exchanges, like a simple rhythm. Turn-taking reduces overlap and helps clarity, making the exchange easier to follow. The comparison is back and forth timing, a steady pattern that keeps the conversation from becoming noise. Here's a calm surprise: cooperation can depend on reputation, who is known to share. Past behavior can shape future invitations because memory stores who was generous and who was not. The comparison is helped before, helped again, like a quiet scorecard that guides trust. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Slowly, we notice. Some animals reconcile after conflict to restore group stability. Repairing relationships can be part of social intelligence, because a group that stays fractured loses efficiency and safety. The number idea is minutes after conflict, when a small calming gesture can reset the tone. A quiet fact: group traditions can persist when young learn from older members. That's how culture-like patterns can last, even without written records or spoken stories. The comparison is generation to generation, like a habit traveling forward through time. One more gentle truth: communication is often about reducing uncertainty for others. A signal says, "Here's what matters right now," and that message can bring a group into alignment. The number idea is uncertainty dropping after a cue, like a fog lifting slightly when the right sound arrives. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. In the background, shared knowledge can be as valuable as individual problem solving. A group can carry information that no single animal holds alone, because each member contributes a piece of the picture. The comparison is many minds, one result, like a puzzle solved by quiet collaboration. A small step forward, culture-like learning is slow, steady intelligence written into habits. It's not flashy, it's reliable, and it can persist when the same solutions keep working. The number idea is months to years, a long calm stretch where behaviour becomes tradition. A softer detail, many animals use landmarks to navigate, even if the landscape is complex. Familiar shapes guide direction like gentle signposts, turning travel into a sequence of recognitions. The comparison is landmark to landmark, one known point leading naturally to the next. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Just for a moment, some animals use the stars or polarized light as navigation cues. The sky can hold patterns that point the way, even when the ground offers few hints. The number idea is night cues over hours, a long quiet guidance written into darkness. Farther out, migratory birds can combine multiple cues: sun, stars, and magnetic signals. Redundancy makes navigation more stable, so if one cue is obscured, another can still guide direction. The number idea is 2 to 3 cue systems working together, like overlapping maps layered in the mind. Closer in, salmon can return to birthplace streams using smell-based memory. A scent signature becomes a long-distance address, guiding travel through rivers and currents until the right water feels familiar. The number idea is years later, a return to something first learned long ago. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. If you drift a little, bees can remember a route between the hive and food sources. Repeated flights turn space into routine, so the path becomes smoother with practice. The number idea is multiple trips per day, each trip reinforcing the invisible corridor through the air. With that in mind, bats refine hunting paths using feedback from echoes. Each echo is a small update about where to turn next, and the updates arrive faster than conscious thought. The number idea is millisecond updates, tiny timing differences that still paint a clear picture of space. Here's a calm surprise. Owls can localize sound with high precision to catch prey in darkness. Tiny timing differences between ears guide the strike, turning faint noise into direction. The number idea is microseconds of difference, an almost impossibly small window that still carries usable information. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Slowly, we notice. Dogs can track scent trails by reading subtle gradients in smell. The world becomes layered information, carried on air, with the nose sampling what the eyes cannot see. The comparison is older versus newer scent, like read in time itself in the shape of a trail. A quiet fact: elephants can communicate with low-frequency rumbles that travel far. Deep sound can coordinate groups over distance, holding a herd together even when the landscape is wide. The number idea is kilometers of reach, a message that doesn't need to be shouted to be strong. One more gentle truth: some rodents build cognitive maps that include shortcuts and alternatives. They don't only memorize a single route, they organize space in a way that allows detours and efficient choices later. In simple comparisons, it's the shortcut versus the learned route, like knowing both the main road and the quieter back path. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. In the background, pigeons can use smell and landmarks together when returning home. Multiple cues make a route more dependable, because if one signal is confusing, another can still guide the way. You can think of it as two cue sources, airborne scent and visible shape, working like layered directions. A small step forward, some animals remember what, where, when, a simple form of episodic-like memory. It's not a narrated story in words, but it can be a bundled event. What happened, where it happened, and roughly when it happened. The number idea is a 3-part memory bundle, compact enough to be useful without being complicated. A softer detail, scrub jays can change caching behavior based on how perishable food is. They treat soon foods differently from later foods, returning to what will spoil first and saving what can wait. The comparison is hours versus days, like a quiet calendar built into choice, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Just for a moment, some primates remember specific fruit trees and their seasonal timing. A forest can become a calendar made of locations where certain places turn on at certain times of year. The number idea is seasonal cycles, repeated until timing feels as familiar as a path. Farther out, ravens can remember where others hide food and check later. Observation becomes delayed action, with the mind holding a quiet note. That spot mattered. The comparison is watch now, search later, a simple plan stretched across time. Closer in, dolphins can remember individual partners and coordinate with them repeatedly. Stable partnerships reduce the need to renegotiate every time, making cooperation smoother and faster. The number idea is repeat team-ups, like a familiar rhythm returning in the same pairing, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. If you drift a little, some animals recognize themselves through body mapping, even without mirrors. Knowing my body in space helps in complex movement, like placing a limb precisely without seeing every point along the way. The number idea is precise limb placement, measured in accuracy rather than in speed. With that in mind, vision can be intelligence supporting when it detects fine motion cues. Tiny movements can reveal what is alive and what is not, especially in grass, leaves, or shadowed water. The comparison is small motion differences, subtle shifts that become meaningful signals. Here's a calm surprise. Some animals show long-term recognition of places that were dangerous before. Avoidance can be a stored safety rule, like a quiet not that path held in memory. The number idea is months later, the lesson still present long after the moment has passed. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Slowly we notice. Navigation can include counting steps, or using internal pacing as a distance cue. Regular movement can estimate how far a trip has been, even without landmarks. The comparison is approximate distance, measured by the body's own rhythm. A quiet fact: memory is often strongest when it's tied to survival, food, shelter, safety. What matters most gets stored most reliably, because the cost of forgetting is higher. The number/comparison idea is high-value events like bright markers on a mostly quiet map. One more gentle truth: animal maps can be made from smell, sound, light, and routine. A world can be known in many sensory languages, not just through vision, and those languages can overlap. The number idea is 4 senses as cues, layered into one navigable reality. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. In the background, tools are often chosen for shape, not for novelty. The mind matches object features to a task's needs, selecting what fits rather than what looks interesting. The comparison is shape fit, like choosing a key by its teeth, not its colour. A small step forward, some animals can pick the right tool from a set of options. Selection shows a plan before action begins because the choice happens first and the result follows. The number idea is 2 to 4 tools offered and the animal choosing the one that actually works. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A softer pause settles in here, like a quiet room between thoughts. Take a gentle inhale through your nose and let the exhale fall out slowly, like a soft tide pulling back. We've moved through maps made of landmarks and smells, and through tools chosen for their shape and usefulness. None of it needs to be held. You can let it drift past, the way you might watch slow clouds in a dark sky. If you notice your attention thinning, that's perfectly fine. The mind doesn't have to grip every detail to understand the feeling of it, and when you're ready, we'll continue, one small fact at a time with space between them. A quieter detail. Planning can be seen when an animal saves a resource for later. The choice suggests a future need is already considered, even if it's only a simple expectation. The comparison is use later, a small act that stretches the present into the near future. Just for a moment, some primates can stack objects to reach something higher. Height becomes solvable through steps and structure, turning vertical space into a sequence of actions. The number idea is 2 to 3 stacked items, placed carefully so the body can rise to the goal. Farther out, insight is when a solution appears suddenly after a pause. The pause matters, attention reorganizes the problem, then the body moves as if the answer has quietly arrived. The comparison is pause, then success, a shift that can look almost calm and instant. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Closer in, flexibility shows up when an animal switches rules without panic. Calm switching is a strong sign of cognitive control, especially when the world changes its demands. The number idea is rule reversal, the same environment asking for a different response. If you drift a little, some birds can solve multi-step puzzles that require doing actions in order. Sequence knowledge is like a short melody of actions. First the latch, then the door, then the reward. The number idea is 3 to 5 steps, each one placed in the right spot. With that in mind, delayed gratification appears when an animal waits for a better reward. Waiting is a quiet yes to the future, choosing later when later is more valuable. The comparison is wait time to reward size, a gentle trade between patience and payoff. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Here's a calm surprise. Some animals can learn abstract rules like, choose the odd one out. The task becomes pattern reasoning, not memorization, because the correct choice changes as the examples change. The number idea is 3 items, one odd, with the mind noticing what doesn't belong. Slowly, we notice. Inhibitory control is when an animal stops itself from attempting but wrong choice. Not doing can be as intelligent as doing, because it means the impulse doesn't get the final say. The comparison is impulse blocked, like a pause button pressed gently at the right moment. A quiet fact. Some mammals can track hidden objects, remembering where something went. The mind keeps the object present, even when it's unseen, as if the world continues behind the curtain. The comparison is object permanence, and it can be tested with something as simple as a treat hidden under a cup. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. One more gentle truth. Some animals use sampling, checking briefly before committing to a choice. Quick checks reduce costly mistakes, like a short sniff or glance that prevents a long wrong turn. The comparison is short check, longer action, tiny inspection, then steady movement. In the background, metacognition-like behaviour appears when animals opt out of hard trials. Choosing not sure can be strategic, because guessing can be costly, and skipping can protect future success. The comparison is choose to skip, a quiet admission written into behaviour rather than words. A small step forward, some primates can remember who saw what in a social scene. Knowledge tracking can guide deception, or cooperation, because it matters who has information and who does not. The comparison is observer versus non-observer, a subtle difference that changes how an animal acts next. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A softer detail, some animals show innovation by combining two learned behaviours into one new solution. Combining is like building a new tool from old parts, using familiar moves in a fresh order. The number idea is behaviour A plus behaviour B, rearranged into something that wasn't practiced directly. Just for a moment, memory strength can improve with sleep and rest cycles in many species. Rest helps stabilise what was learned, turning a fragile pattern into something more durable. The comparison is after rest, the behaviour returning smoother than before. Farther out, some animals can learn to follow an unseen rule from repeated outcomes. The pattern becomes clear through experience, not explanation, as if the mind is extracting the rule from the rewards. The number idea is reward pattern across trials, a quiet trend that shapes the next choice, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Closer in, tool use can be social, spreading when one animal is watched by others. A single technique can become a group habit, passing through attention and imitation. The comparison is one demonstrator, many learners, like a ripple moving outward. If you drift a little, some animals keep track of quantities approximately when deciding where to forage. More and less can be enough to guide action, even without exact counting. The number idea is about 1 to 5 items, a small range where differences are easiest to sense. With that in mind, flexible intelligence often looks like calm experimentation, not frantic effort. Small tests, small adjustments, then a stable solution, like tuning a method until it fits. The number idea is tiny changes per try, a gradual refinement that makes the outcome more reliable. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Here's a calm surprise: planning and tools are two ways a mind reaches beyond the body's limits. One extends time, the other extends reach, and together they turn the environment into a partner in survival. The comparison is reach plus time extension, a simple summary of how intention can stretch outward. Slowly we notice, human intelligence is not the only shape intelligence can take. Different lives shape different minds, and that diversity matters because each mind is adapted to the problems it must solve. The comparison is many solutions to one world, like many quiet designs responding to the same planet. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A quiet fact: intelligence can be hidden by calm behaviour and slow movement. Quiet animals may still be making careful decisions, with the planning happening inside rather than on the surface. The comparison is slow outside, busy inside, like a deep current beneath still water. One more gentle truth: intelligence can be mistaken for training, but learning itself is the point. Whether learned alone or guided, the brain is still adapting, changing what happens after experience. The comparison is before versus after learning, a shift you can sometimes see in smoother choices and fewer mistakes. In the background, animal emotions are studied through behaviour patterns and physiology. Scientists look for consistent signs, not human-like stories, because the goal is careful evidence. The comparison is heart rate and stress hormones, signals that can change with fear, calm and social contact. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A small step forward, social bonds can be measured by time spent near others and support behaviours. Closeness becomes data when patterns repeat, like who rests beside whom and who responds when another is distressed. The number idea is minutes per hour together, a gentle metric of companionship. A softer detail, cooperation can be tracked through who shares, who warns, and who helps. Helping behaviours often have clear patterns across repeated events, especially when the same group stays together over time. The number idea is help rate over days, a trend that reveals whether support is steady or rare. Just for a moment, some animals grieve or show prolonged change after loss in observed patterns. Researchers focus on sustained behaviour shifts and social changes, like reduced activity, altered routines, or changes in proximity to others. The number idea is days to weeks, a long, quiet stretch where behaviour looks different than before. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Farther out, when animals solve problems, the environment matters as much as the brain. A good setup reveals ability, while a poor setup can hide it, the way a dim lamp can hide a perfectly readable page. The comparison is task fit, how well the test matches the animal's natural skills and senses. Closer in, intelligence can be conserved energy, doing the least work for the best result. Efficient choices are often the most smart, even if they look simple from the outside. The number idea is less effort, same reward, like choosing the shortest path rather than the most dramatic one. If you drift a little, many animals show intelligence through adaptation, not dominance. The quiet goal is survival and stability, not winning, and that often means adjusting to seasons, weather, and changing resources. A stable routine across seasons can be a kind of intelligence all by itself, steady and unshowy. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. With that in mind, ethical research reduces stress and prioritizes welfare in study design. Better welfare usually means cleaner, more reliable behavior data, because stressed animals don't behave like they normally would. The comparison is minimize stress cues, as if the experiment becomes clearer when the animal feels safer. Here's a calm surprise. Conservation benefits from understanding animal cognition and needs. Protecting minds often means protecting habitats and social structures, not just individual bodies. The number/comparison idea is home range size, because space, sometimes wide space, can be part of what the mind is built to use. Slowly, we notice. Intelligence can be fragile when habitats are disrupted or resources vanish. A mind tuned to one world struggles when the world changes fast, because the rules it learned no longer apply cleanly. The comparison is rapid change versus slow adaptation, like a river changing course before the map can be redrawn. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A quiet fact. Comparing species works best when we compare skills that matter to each species. The fairest question is not who is smartest, but what does this animal need to do well to live its life? The comparison is skill fit, like judging a boat by how it moves through water, not by how it climbs a hill. One more gentle truth. Intelligence can be distributed in groups, like in colonies or coordinated pods. Many small roles can produce one smart result, even when no single individual holds the whole plan. The number idea is many individuals, one outcome, like a pattern emerging from countless small movements. In the background, curiosity is often a gentle sign of a mind collecting information. Investigation builds a library of what the world is like, stored as familiarity and expectation rather than as words. The The comparison is repeat visits to novelty, returning again and again as if the question is still interesting. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. A small step forward, memory is one of the simplest ways intelligence leaves a footprint. A remembered detail changes a future decision, even if the change is subtle and quiet. The comparison is past a future link, like a small bridge that turns experience into guidance. A softer detail, tool use, is one of the clearest ways intention becomes visible. A mind chooses an object, then uses it for a purpose, turning the environment into part of the body's reach. The number idea is object chosen from options, a decision that happens before the action unfolds. Just for a moment, social intelligence is one of the quietest forms of genius in nature. It keeps groups stable through recognition, timing and repair, shaping who rests near whom and who trusts whom. The number idea is dozens of relationships, held like a living network that changes slowly over time, and for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Farther out, animal intelligence is not one ladder, but many branches. Each branch fits a life: water, air, forest, ground, or reef, so the same planet can host many kinds of thinking. The comparison is many branches, like a tree spreading outward in different directions, each limb strong in its own way. Closer in, on Earth, thinking is everywhere, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, often subtle. The calm takeaway is variety, many minds, many gentle solutions, shaped by the problems that return each day. The number idea is from milliseconds to years, a whole spectrum of time in which learning, memory and decision can live. And for one sleepy soul, that's enough to rest. Now, as we begin to settle toward the end, you can let these ideas soften and blur, the way a scene becomes gentler when a light is turned down. Nothing here needs to be held tightly. Tiny choices, long memories, quiet tools, shared songs, group paths, invisible maps, patience, gentle curiosity. You don't need to remember any of this. If a fact stays, it can stay. If it slips away, it can slip away. Your body already understands how to rest, and your mind can follow at its own pace, like a slow tide finding the shore. Good night, and thank you for being here with Sleepy Science Universe. And if you ever want another calm set of facts on a different night, we'll be here, moving slowly through the world, one quiet sentence at a time.